This is almost everything I've knit or crocheted in the last year, excluding things I gifted away and or I forgot about. This is everything I could remember. Hi everyone, my name is Alex, and on this channel I talk about all things knitting, crochet, and fiber in general. Welcome to the most anticipated video of the year, the video I've been looking forward to since I started my channel, and that is everything I knit and crocheted in 2024. 2024 was a year that I found a craft that changed the course of my life. I started crocheting in 2023, and I crocheted for about a year, and then last February 2024, I started knitting, and it has completely consumed my life. I've made so many things. I found such an amazing community. I started this YouTube channel and my Instagram and my TikTok. I think about fiber arts daily, hourly, minute by minute. It's like consumes so much space in my brain. I love it so much. I fall asleep thinking about knitting. I wake up thinking about knitting. I'm excited for every day because it means I get to knit or crochet or do something creative. I am so excited to get to kind of do a year in review and look at all the things that I made. I want to talk about all the things that I loved, all the things I didn't like so much, if I would knit the thing again, and if there are any alterations I would make if I were to knit it again. I'm going to try my best to remember yarns and names of designers and names of patterns, but if I can't remember it, I will also make sure to link everything down in the description. I think YouTube puts a limit on how many words there can be in the caption. If I can't fit everything, I will link a Ravelry bundle with all the patterns, with all the designers. Also, this is going to be loosely chronological. I wasn't very good about taking notes. I felt like my documenting on my social media was acting as my notes, but I didn't really want to go back through my social media and figure out exactly what order I made things. So things might be a little out of order, but this is loosely chronological. Without further ado, let's get into it because this is going to be a long video. The first thing I made was a crochet project. Like I mentioned, I've been crocheting for about 2 years now, and I didn't start knitting until February. So I made this in January of 2024. This is a granny square bag that I just freehanded. I've made a granny square bag before, which is why I think I was able to freehand this one. So I guess I like loosely followed a pattern just based on memory. And that was an amazing YouTube video that I will be sure to link in the description. I don't think that the YouTube video uses these sunflower granny squares. I looked up a separate tutorial for these sunflower granny squares, and then just based on memory of that video, I whip stitched them all together into this bag. And then I did a double crochet strap. Stand on this thing. It's honestly the perfect bag. Like, I love it so much. I actually use it all the time. I use it as a project bag, even though it is not lined. So like my needles and stuff often poke through. So one of my goals for 2025 is to line this bag, figure out how to line this bag. I've yet to incorporate any kind of fabric sewing skills, which are non-existent with fiber arts, but I would really like to line this bag. It's just a great size. I really like the strap like this, but it's also long enough to be a crossbody. So yeah, I think I'm gonna try things on, but I'm also gonna insert photos because with this lighting situation, it's kind of hard to tell the real color of things. This was my second finished object and first knit object and first thing I ever knit. Little asterisk there. I did learn to knit when I was about 7 years old. My grandmother taught me, but I basically just knit garter stitch headbands, and I knit for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then I totally forgot about it. So I haven't knit in 15 years. This was the first time I picked up the needles again. I really remembered absolutely nothing. This is the first thing I would consider I've knit in my like conscious life. This is the step-by-step sweater by Florence Miller, handmade by Florence. This is a free pattern with a full video tutorial, and the video tutorial is the reason that I decided to start knitting, because I was watching everything I made in 2023 YouTube videos because I crocheted and I like fiber arts. And because I started watching all those videos, my algorithm suggested Florence's video, and she made it look so easy that I decided I'm gonna knit a sweater. So I went to Michael's and I bought Lion Brand Pound of Love, which is a 100% acrylic yarn. It's actually a little bit thinner gauge than Florence recommends in the pattern, but I didn't know anything about gauge at the time. So I think it's a worsted, but she recommends an Aran or bulky. I don't know, it worked out. I like the fabric a lot. I got it in this nice charcoal gray color. I followed her video tutorial Exactly. I honestly didn't even really read the pattern the first time. I just watched the video, and I did not do the German short rows, and I also did not do the arm shaping. I just knit tubes. Everything's just a tube. I feel like it's pretty good for the first thing I've ever knit. There are some mistakes, like my stitches are a little uneven in the yoke area, but then I eventually figured it out for the rest of the body. And I had this hole where I missed, maybe I did like two, I don't know what happened here. I didn't do an increase. I knit through the wrong leg of my make one right. But I have this little hole here that I have just left there because it helps me know which way is the front and which way is the back, since there's no short rows. Like, it's not even the back, like the back is higher than the front. And then I also did the folded collar, and I really like how this collar sits on me. I wear this sweater all the time. It's probably my most worn make because it's so comfortable. The acrylic yarn that I use is not itchy whatsoever. It's actually really, really soft. And also, I wash and dry this with all my other clothes all the time. Like, anytime I do laundry, I just throw this in because I wear it so frequently that it usually needs to be washed. And just the ease of this garment makes it one of my favorite things I've ever made. I also decided to crop it quite a bit. Cuts off like above my jeans even. It is extremely cropped, but I like cropped things. So, and I didn't want to knit anymore. So the next thing I made, I actually don't have because they were a gift. I knit the Ole mittens by Suzanne Mueller, and I knit these as a gift for my friend for her birthday because she really loves ice skating, and I thought it'd be really cute to knit her a pair of mittens to wear while we go ice skating. And this was my first time ever reading a pattern that didn't have a YouTube video tutorial. Like, even all the crochet patterns I followed have been video tutorials, so this was my first time reading to do something, which was quite a challenge. It was also my first time using magic loop because on a mitten, it's small enough circumference that you need to either use magic loop or double pointed needles. I had a whole interchangeable knitted needle set, so I was like, I'm not buying double pointed needles. I can just use the materials I have. And it was very difficult. There's actually a whole progress vlog situation of those mittens if you'd like to go watch that, but you see me seriously struggle and then eventually figure it out. And then the third thing that was really hard about this pattern was that it is half fisherman's rib, which me at the time, I did not know that that was a difficult stitch to knit. I just liked the look of the mitten. So I was like, I'm gonna figure it out. That's kind of my thinking with most things, is I could figure that out. And eventually I did figure it out, and I knit both mittens, and I love them a lot, and she loved them. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. What I learned from that project is that anybody can do anything if you have enough patience and perseverance, because I frogged that so many times. The needles were poking me in my hands. It hurt my hands to like physically do the stitch. I didn't understand the instructions, and I seriously thought the pattern was wrong for a while. Obviously the pattern's not wrong. Like, Suzanne Mueller is a very well-known knitwear designer. She knows what she's doing. But I did finish them, and I actually love the finished object. And now, 9 months later, with all the skills that I've acquired, I would definitely knit them again. I love the half fisherman's rib. I love the classic look of the mitten, but I love the decreases that are written in the pattern. Would highly, highly, highly recommend these mittens. My third finished object is another step-by-step sweater by Florence Miller, the exact same pattern, but this time I did do the German short rows on the back of the neck. I also did the arm shaping, and I did stripes. So this is like the full pattern as Florence intended it, and I really upped my knitting game with this one. I also tried really hard to do jogless stripes to varying degrees of success. Like here, it's not so good, but here it's maybe a little bit better. I knit this in Drops Lima, held with a strand of Drops brushed alpaca silk, and I'll put the colors in the description because I'm forgetting the names of the colors right now. It's 4 strands of yarn. That's a lot of colors to remember. This yarn was actually originally intended for the Augustins number 2 by Sophie Velling, but that is a color work project, and I started it and then realized I was not ready for color work. So then I pivoted and did another step-by-step sweater. And oh my goodness, am I so glad that I did that, because I absolutely love this sweater. First of all, it is so much warmer than my first version, which makes sense because this is, I think the Lima is 75% wool, 25% alpaca or something like that, maybe 65% wool, 35% alpaca, and then the Drops brushed alpaca silk is alpaca and silk, so it's 100% natural fibers and mostly animal fibers. Is silk an animal fiber? that's a question for another time. It's so warm. I can wear this. It's like very insulating, but it's also cooling at the same time. This really just keeps my body at the right temperature, unless it's too hot outside in the winter time. This keeps my body at the right temperature regardless if I'm inside and it's really warm or if I'm outside and it's cold. One thing about this yarn is that it is quite itchy. And this will be a common theme. I'm going to say this multiple times, I'm sure. I am sensitive to wool. I think I'm less sensitive to alpaca. I have yet to knit with anything that's 100% alpaca. I'll get to another knit later that is much more percentage alpaca than wool, but still has some wool in it, and I find it less itchy than this. I do think that my tolerance for wool is increasing a little bit though, because right now I just have a tank top underneath this, and while I do feel it on my arms and definitely on my neck, it's manageable. Like, I can wear this if I'm not overstimulated. Does that make sense? But it is definitely much more comfortable with a turtleneck underneath. I do have a couple turtleneck shirts that work perfectly under this, and it's so comfortable and so warm, and I've worn it many, many, many times. I also cropped this one, but I cropped it a little bit less than the other one, so this one covers my belt. And I do like the length of this better than my first step-by-step sweater, so I aimed for my sweaters to hit here now. I kept the neck as a turtleneck, funnel neck situation. I didn't fold it over. And I knit the arms much longer, and I love the length of these arms. I wish all the lengths of the arms on all my sweaters were this length. So in the future, that's what I'll be doing. I want to be like smothered in my sweater. Backing up timeline wise a little bit, I finished this in March. I finished the second step-by-step sweater at the beginning of April, but I finished this at the beginning of March. This is a Tunisian crochet beanie that I freehanded for Max, my boyfriend, for his birthday. And I did just regular Tunisian crochet, and it makes this really cool waffle stitch. And it has a nice skinny little brim, and it's 100% wool. I think I used Woolies, but the 100% wool version of Woolies, because Woolies has a couple different yarns. This is the 100% wool version. It's a cool little beanie, like the kind of cap beanie where people just wear it on the top of their head. Max loves it, but I didn't love how I did the seam up the back. I crocheted a rectangle, and then I seamed it up the side, and then I did decreases around the top to close up the top. And I don't love the seam in the back. Max doesn't mind because it's the back of his head, so we can't really see it, but I can see it, so I care. I made it my mission this year to fix this beanie, and I'm close. Like, I'm really close. So I'll show you what the version 2 looks like a little bit later. A nice, simple Tunisian crochet beanie. After my second version of the step-by-step sweater, in addition to some other things that I'll show you in a second, I knit the Aniela hat by Alexandra Solowaniec, I think is her name. I will correct that if I'm wrong. This is a 2-color brioche beanie. So I knit the Ole mittens, which are half fisherman's rib, which is very similar to brioche, but this is a full brioche, and I knit it in Knitting for Olive heavy merino. But I love this beanie. The pattern was super easy to follow, very clear. I had some trouble with the cast on. I think it calls for a tubular cast on. I still haven't figured out a tubular cast on, like an Italian cast on. No idea how to do that. But I figured out the brioche. I actually made a tutorial for how to knit brioche. That's on my channel if you want to watch it, because I feel like I gathered a bunch of information from a bunch of other YouTube tutorials and kind of culminated it and made it hopefully easy to understand in one place. So if you are also knitting brioche and struggling, there's my resource for you. I love the decreases on this beanie. I think that they're so cool how it's like this spine here, and the decreases kind of disappear into the spines 4 times around the crown. It is technically reversible. So one side has one of the colors dominant, and then the other side has the other color dominant. But I like it with the brown on the outside because I don't like how my decreases look on this side. And you can tell that I only wear it with the brown on the outside because I have not woven in my ends. And I don't think I ever will. So I just don't like that the brown looks like that on the top on the other side. And I also really like the white being closer to my head. So I'll insert a photo of me wearing this. If I put on every hat that I will show you in this video, my hair would look insane. So I'm just gonna hold it up. The Knitting for Olive heavy merino is itchy for me. I could wear this hat because I made it, but it's definitely not the most comfortable thing. And I'm a little bummed because I've heard that Knitting for Olive is comfortable for most people. And like I said, I'm going to say this multiple times, I am sensitive to wool. So the next thing that I knit is the blouse number 1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear in this really cool burnt orange color. I knit this using Yarn Citizen fingering held double. in the color chestnut. I think it's their Unity fingering. It's 100% Peruvian wool, and I knit the size medium, I think. My measurements told me that I should knit the size large, but my gauge was a little loose. So instead of going down a needle size, I went down a size in the pattern. There's actually a whole saga with this. I knit until I split for sleeves. Like I knit the whole yoke and then realized it was way too big and frogged the whole thing and started over. Which was a little bit of a bummer, but I really do like the finished object so much more. And I really like the fabric that I got with this. So I knit it on 5mm needles, which is what the pattern calls for. But again, my gauge is a little bit looser than my favorite things knitwear. And so I knit the size medium. This yarn is also itchy for me. It's a little less itchy than the Drops Lima, but it's still not fully comfortable. Again, I can tolerate it if I really want to wear this long sleeve shirt, but I don't know if I would choose the yarn again for a sweater. I do love the pattern, would highly recommend it to everybody. I really like the shoulder shaping. I think it's called a contiguous sleeve construction, where you do increases on either side of this seam right here until you get to the top of your shoulder, and then you stop doing increases on the outside of that seam, and you start doing increases on the inside of that seam to open it up for the shoulder. And it gives like a nice set in sleeve look without it being a set in sleeve. Like there's no seaming, it's just a contiguous sleeve. And I do think that this is my favorite shaping on me. I have quite broad shoulders, and I find that raglan seams that are like really far down kind of make me look bigger up here. I also think that a drop shoulder is maybe a little less flattering. This just looks like a nice tailored fit, you know? I really like a contiguous sleeve. Going back for a second to the step-by-step sweater though, the raglan shaping, the raglan seams on this sweater are genius. They're kind of far out, so they kind of like curve down on the arm and don't go from your neck to your armpit like that. Like they're not diagonal, they're kind of curve. And even though there's like, you increase at the same rate the whole time. Anyway, I just really like the placement of the raglan on the step-by-step sweater. Thought I should mention that. I would say this pattern is very beginner friendly. It does have short rows, German short rows in the back, but that's like the hardest technique. There's no ribbing, the whole thing is knitting. I guess when you do the short rows, you do have to purl like when you're making the short rows, but there's no purling anywhere else. It does just have you just bind off in pattern. So it's just a stockinette, and it rolls a little bit, but not too much. I kind of like that it rolls a little bit. I did Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, which is what I do for everything that's stockinette. Like I never just do a regular bind off because mine is always too tight. So yeah, I also love, it's kind of hard because I have this tank top underneath right now that's showing through, but I love this boat neck design. I think it's really elegant and flattering. The yarn is holding up pretty well. It is pilling a little bit underneath my arms here in the high friction areas, but also I don't wear this as much as I would like to because it is too itchy. I really need to wear a long sleeve shirt underneath it, but I don't have any long sleeve shirts that are thin enough to wear under something that's more fitted like this. Like my other sweaters are oversized, so it's really easy to wear a long sleeve shirt underneath, but it feels just like too bulky to wear a long sleeve shirt underneath something that's fitted. I don't know, I just don't like it on me, but I do like this sweater. I think I would like to knit it again in the yarn that the pattern calls for, which is knitting for olive pure silk. I think that would be luxurious and amazing and not as itchy. The next thing I knit is the Winnie sweater by Celine, Woozy by Celine. She also has a podcast here on YouTube. Would highly recommend watching her. I love her videos, love, love, love. This was actually a test knit, my first test anything. I haven't tested any pattern before this. Test knit this for her in June. Pattern calls for a Sager EcoSoft or a Sager Soft. I don't know, it's a blown yarn, a Sager's version of a blown yarn, but that was a little out of my budget. So another recommended yarn is Drops Air, and that is what I knit this in. I knit this in Drops Air in the color dark olive. It's like 75% alpaca, 20% polyamide. It's mostly alpaca, a little polyamide for the core, and 8% wool. So it's a blown yarn with a chainette core, and it gives a nice fuzzy halo. I find this the most next to skin comfortable thing that I've knit other than my acrylic step-by-step sweater. I wear it all the time because it's comfortable enough to wear next to skin and also so warm because it is animal fiber. So I will definitely 100% be knitting with the Drops Air again. I cropped mine a little bit. Mine is shorter than the pattern calls for because my torso is pretty short. I think Celine, she's like I don't know how tall she actually is, but she looks very long and lean, and I'm more short. I cropped it, not substantially, just maybe like 6 centimeters, which might sound like a lot to some people, but is not that much to me. I really love the bell sleeves. It is also a contiguous sleeve construction, so you do the same, increasing on the outside of the seam right here, and then you increase on the inside to open up the sleeve cap, and then you knit the body in the round and the sleeves in the round, and you do some increases out here to get this nice bell shape. I do think that the yoke depth is a little deep for me. I'd like the yoke to maybe end here. It's an intentional choice, and I just wear it like that. I think that's just because right here, like where the yoke ends is the widest part of my torso, and I don't like to accentuate that. Like that's where my bust is. So anyway, that's just my own personal feeling. The bell sleeves, while beautiful, like I love the look of them, they're not very practical. It's hard to wash dishes. I have started rolling them up, which is a little hard to do because there's so much fabric. If I were to knit this pattern again, I'd just keep it a straight sleeve just for more practicality. But I do love that I have the bell sleeve option. And I also love the little funnel neck. It's not a turtleneck, it's not a mock neck. It's a funnel neck, like it just funnels up your neck. And I really, really, really love the shaping. Celine has a no roll edge technique in the pattern with a video tutorial, so it's super easy to understand. And I do think it totally helps the edges not roll. Like if you look at this compared to my blouse number 1, which doesn't have any no roll edging, the edges here are very much rolling over, but here they're not rolling over. So I really appreciate that. It does have some short row shaping in the back of the neck, and instead of using German short rows, you have the option to do Japanese short rows, which hide the turns a little bit easier because you're using a blown yarn that it's like fluffy and a little airy. And the gauge, I think this is knit on 5.5 millimeter needles, but it's an Aran weight yarn, so it's a little more open. I can see the turns in this color because it's a darker color, but some of the other test knitters who are knitting it in a lighter color, you could see their turns. So you can do Japanese short rows, which hide those turns a little bit more. And there is also a video tutorial for that in the pattern. So that's really awesome. I would highly recommend this pattern for beginners after you knit, maybe like the step-by-step sweater. This is a great second sweater to knit. Super clear instructions, great construction, lovely, elegant finished object. Also, this yarn, despite it being super soft, isn't pilling as much as I expected it to. People say that drops air pills a lot, but I haven't really experienced that. Maybe a little bit under my arms, but not huge pills. My second step-by-step sweater, on the other hand, which just drops Lima and drops brushed alpaca silk, is pilling quite a lot underneath the arms. There, it's hard to, it's not really picking up on camera, but it is pilling, starting to pill. I need to deal with that. My next finished object, fluff in my nose, is the 7 p.m. tank, which is a pattern by Tiffany Ty. I'm gonna put it on for you. This is a very cropped little tank top that is knit on super small needles. I think I knit this on 2.5 and 2 millimeter needles. Like the body was knit on 2.5 and then I did the straps on 2 millimeter. I knitted in Rowan Egyptian cotton 4-ply, which is a fingering weight yarn. It's not what the pattern calls for, but that's what I found. In the color Eggplant, I believe. This is the color Eggplant. It's this like nice deep, sorry, you're just gonna look at my boobs for a second because I don't know how else to show you this, but it's in this nice deep purple color. The shirt has quite interesting construction. So you knit the waist part in 4 different sections. You start by knitting the front panel, which goes from here to here, and you knit it, it's like you cast on here and you knit this way, so it's knit from side to side. You can see the stitches are moving this way. Then you knit 2 little back panels, one right there and one right there, and then seam them all together, so like seams here, and then you knit a panel of ribbing in the back from the bottom up, so you cast on here and knit upwards. So this is a 1x1 ribbed little panel, and then you attach that to the other panels, and it kind of like cinches it all in the back. Once you have your waist panel like in a tube, you pick up stitches all the way around and knit up, and then you knit double knit straps with like 4 stitches on each side, so 8 total stitches of double knitting. Very skinny little straps. My straps, I tried to knit them, I definitely knit them shorter than the pattern said to, and I really stretched them when I was trying it on. And I feel like they're the right length right now, but to be honest, I haven't worn this tank top out in the real world because I finished it right as it was getting into fall time. And it wasn't like the time to wear a tiny little tank top anymore, but I do hope that I get use out of this next summer. Some things that I don't love are that it's kind of puckering right here where I picked up stitches. Like I feel like it needs to sit down a little bit more. I think that that could be fixed if my waistband was tighter. It's a little loose. It's not loose. Like it maybe just has 0 negative ease and 0 positive ease. It just fits. But if it had a little bit of negative ease, then I think that they would fix that issue. I do think that if I were to ever knit a bra, I would use this same yarn because on the same size needles, because of the fabric that it makes. It's super comfortable and supportive enough to be a bra. This was tedious. I went to Europe this summer and this was the only project I took with me because it was nice and small. It was on really small needles, so I knew it would take me a long time. I'd be like backpacked around Europe. I did not have space for another project. And I really didn't knit on it that much. I mostly knit on it before we went and like a little bit at the beginning of the trip, but then I finished it when we got back from the trip at the end of August. It just really dragged on because it's such small needles. So I don't know if I love knitting with such small needles. I don't know if I will repeat a small needle project in the future. I think I will stick to my 3.5 plus millimeter needles. This was 2 and 2.5 is a little small. But if you like the tank top, I would highly recommend the pattern. It's pretty adjustable. Like you can make it, it's kind of like made to measure. There's lots of points in the pattern where you can decide what dimensions you want to do for your body. My next finished object is a musselburgh. This is a pattern by Ysolda, and it's one of the most popular patterns on Ravelry, so I'm sure you've heard of it. But if you haven't, it's this super cute beanie that you don't have to gauge swatch for, so you can use any weight yarn from a lace weight to a DK weight, I think. And you cast on at the top and you get to a point where you have enough fabric to measure your gauge. And then based on your current gauge, there's a little chart in the pattern that tells you how many increases to do before you knit the rest of the hat. So it's very versatile and great pattern. I would highly recommend. I've talked a lot about this hat on TikTok. And yeah, I recommend it to everybody. I knit this in Madeline Tosh fingering, which is a 100% superwash merino wool in the color Found Pottery. And it's this speckled, it looks like sprinkles. I really, really, really love the colorway. This yarn was kindly gifted to me by a subscriber. So thank you so much to the person who gifted me this yarn. I really love it. And I wear this beanie all the time. I would say this is my most worn beanie that I've knit myself, just because it's comfortable enough to wear on my forehead. It's a little itchy. I do find it a little itchy, but it's comfortable enough that I can power through it. And it's just like the perfect thickness. Let me show you the construction, because if you haven't seen a musselburgh before, this is going to be shocking. Okay, you ready? This is what you knit. So you cast on the top with a very small amount of stitches, and then you increase out in 4 locations until you get to the circumference that you want, and then you knit a really long tube before mirroring and you decrease on the other side to close it all in. So this is like a potato shaped thing. Bean. What's another oblong shaped? Pill shaped thing, maybe. And then you fold it in on itself like that, and you can fold up the brim, which is what I like to do, which means that the head, the part of the hat that's on your head, is double lined and the brim is quadruple lined. So there's 4 layers on your forehead. My brother came home recently and I was wearing this beanie, and he looked at me and he's like, "Did you make that one?" Because I knit him a beanie too, which I'll show you later. And I said, "Yeah, I knit this one." And he was shocked. Everybody who I tell I made this is shocked because it looks machine made. I knit it on 3.25 millimeter needles, which is not the needle that the yarn recommends. I think the yarn recommends 2.75, but I did not want to knit on such a small needle. So I went up to 3.25 and it worked out great. I really like the fabric that I made. There's my musselburgh. And this was the start of my hat obsession. I have one more sweater to show you, and then I have mostly hats. Some other accessories too. Yeah, I really love beanie knitting. They just make the perfect gift. My next finished object, this is like my magnum opus. This is my most impressive knit of the year, I think. So this is the Esther sweater, which is a pattern by Petite Knit. This is my first Petite Knit pattern, which is crazy because I feel like a lot of people start out with Petite Knit. I don't know why I didn't. I just found Florence and I found a bunch of other patterns that I liked, and it took me a while to get to a Petite Knit pattern. This was also my first time doing this type of construction and my first time doing not just a stockinette sweater. So it has this really cool all over knit purl texture. It has a bunch of moss stitch. So this is all moss stitch. And then these diamonds, which are moss stitch, combined with these diamonds that are just all purl stitches. And this is right, these are knit stitches. It has a double folded collar and 1x1 ribbing details. I loved knitting this sweater so much, and I love the finished object so much. Some issues I have are my own fault. So the construction of the sweater, you start at the back of your neck and you knit a trapezoidal shaped thing with increases. And the way that I did my increases was I accidentally did make one lefts when you're supposed to do make one rights, and make one rights when you're supposed to make one lefts, because in the chart it just shows you like a little Y thing. I'll insert it on the screen so you know what I'm talking about. And I didn't know if that Y was pointing in the direction that the stitch, like I didn't know which leg was leaning. So I just chose one and then stuck with it. I didn't realize until later that Petite Knit puts all of her abbreviations at the end of her patterns, not at the beginning, which every other pattern I followed up until that point puts them all at the beginning. So I didn't see the little key that tells you which symbol is a left versus right leaning increase. Anyway, I did them wrong. Which means that this seam right here is thicker than, like, it's supposed to go directly into the arm seam, which is just a little knit stitch. And that was one error, but I'll get over it. But also, those increases are kind of pulling on the fabric, like it's tighter there than I want it to be. And I think if I do this type of construction again, which actually I'm working on a sweater right now that's not finished, it will not be in this video, but if you want to see it, make sure to subscribe so you can see my podcast episode updates. If I do this construction again, I'm going to make sure to make all my increases looser than I think they need to be, because I don't want it to be too tight again. And I just saw a video from High Fiber Knits. She said that the same thing was happening to her on another Petite Knit sweater, where it's just like the increases are tighter than the rest of the fabric, so it kind of puckers. After you knit your trapezoidal shaped thing, then you pick up stitches on the other side of those angles and you knit over the shoulders, and then you join it underneath the neck, and you knit the front panel, and then you join underneath the arms and knit the body and the round, pick up stitches for the sleeves and knit the sleeves in the round. In the pattern photos, I didn't love how the sleeves looked like they were ballooning out from the arm. So I decided to knit my yoke depth a little bit less than the pattern said to. The distance from here to here is shorter than it said to do in the pattern, so that my pickup rate for the sleeve matched the circumference of the hole a little bit better. And I do think that I was successful in that. I really like the way my sleeves are shaped. There's no instructions in the pattern, which I forget if it's Jessica or Rachel who knit this. I think Jessica knit this from Those Twins Who Knit, another podcast that I really love watching and would highly recommend. She also knit the Esther sweater. She also mentioned this, which is that Petite Knit does not tell you the rate at which to pick up your stitches to get this seam here to line up with the seam down the sleeve. So that took a little bit of trial and error. Eventually I did figure it out. Basically, for my size at least, you pick up 74 stitches, and this motif on the top of the sleeve is a 25 stitch motif. So that leaves 25 stitches on one half and 24 stitches on the other half. And once I figured that out, then I was able to get it to line up. Another thing about this sweater is that while it did grow a lot with blocking, I do think it's a little more cropped than I like. And I'm considering going in and fixing that. So right now it really ends right at the top of my pants. And I would like it to be more like my second step-by-step sweater and end at the bottom of my belt. It does, like I can pull it there and it kind of stays, but if I move around at all, like it doesn't really lay there, if that makes sense. So I would like to lengthen the body just a little bit, but an even higher priority is that I would like to lengthen the sleeves. So the sleeves look fine. They end right at my hands. They end actually even a little bit after my hands. But if I move my arms at all, then the sleeves end up here. And I would prefer the sleeves to end up here. So I'm thinking about picking up stitches before the ribbing, knitting the other half of this motif, and then maybe grafting it together or reknitting the ribbing I'm not sure what I'm gonna do, but I would like to lengthen at least the sleeves if I don't also lengthen the body. One other detail that I did is that all of my ribbing is actually inside out. I find that when I knit ribbing in the round, the side that's facing away from me is neater than the side that is facing me. And I wanted the neater ribbing to be on the outside. So right before I started the ribbing, I did a short row turn, like here at the bottom, and that turned my sleeve inside out so that I was knitting, like I was facing the inside of the sleeve, so that the outside of the sleeve was my neater ribbing. And I really like that I did that. I do think that my ribbing is super neat. In hindsight, after it's blocked, it looks pretty much the same. This is what the ribbing would have looked like, and this is what the ribbing looks like. It's a marginal difference. I can tell, so I'm happy that I did it, but I don't know if I need to do that on every sweater. I'm glad I did it on this sweater that's a light color because you can really see the stitches. On something that's a darker color or held with mohair or something, I don't think I need to do that because there's not as much stitch definition. So I did that on both sleeves, on the hem, and I also did that on the collar. So the first time that I did the collar, I did not do my short row turn to turn it around because I thought it'll be fine. But then I didn't like it, so I ripped it back and did the collar again. And then I bound off the collar, and I just bound it off like knitting two together, like it says two in the pattern, but it was too tight to get over my head. So then I ripped it back again, not the whole way, just ripped out the bind off. And then I did a combination of what Petite Knit says to do in her pattern, which is basically like a knit two together to fold the collar down, combined with Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, where I did a yarn over between each of the knit two togethers before passing the yarn over and the previous stitch over. I don't know if that makes any sense. I think I could probably make a tutorial because I really like the way that I bound off this collar, and it's definitely stretchy enough to get over my head. Whoa, that was a lot to say about the Esther sweater. I just feel like it needs a lot of time. I'm very proud of this knit, I think. This is the kind of thing where I look at it and I think, I can't believe I made that. Oh, the yarn. What yarn did I use? I used Drops Lima in the color Wheat Mix, which is the same color as the Lima I used for the lighter of my step-by-step sweater. I did hold this one with a strand of Drops Brushed Alpaca Silk. I did not hold this with any other yarn. This is just the Lima by itself, which is a DK weight yarn. And the reason that I knit the Esther sweater in the same color was because I didn't understand yarn quantities. It took me a while to figure out how much yarn to buy for projects because this was my second sweater. First, I really underestimated how much yarn I would need. And then when I ordered yarn again to finish the sweater, I way overestimated how much yarn I would need, and I had pretty much a full sweater's quantity of yarn left over. I think I needed 2 extra balls to finish the sweater. I've since figured out that I think I need roughly 1,000 meters of yarn to knit a sweater, a DK weight sweater. I bought probably 800 extra meters of yarn for this, but it's okay because I really love the color and I got a whole other sweater out of it. The Drops Lima is itchy. Again, I wear it because I made it and I like it. This one is a little bit easier to wear a long sleeve shirt underneath because it has the high neck like this. Like every long sleeve shirt I own fits underneath here. So I usually wear it with a long sleeve shirt. Would highly recommend the pattern, even to beginners. If you want to knit a cabled or textured sweater, I would say this is a great pattern to start with because it's super clear. The chart is very easily memorizable after you get, I'd say like after you knit one panel, like the back panel, it's pretty easy to remember. It's much easier to remember once you join in the round. If I knit it again, I think I'd like to knit the Esther jacket because it'd be cool to have like 2 versions. Or maybe I'd knit the Esther sweater for Max and then we can be matching in our Esther sweaters. Okay, so now it's gonna get a little crazy. I'm looking at this box of hats here and I think I'm just gonna group them into types of hats that I knit. So the first type of hat, which is I guess also the next thing I finished, is the Oslo hat by Petite Knit. This is a stockinette beanie that is perfect. It's just like the perfect stockinette beanie. I love it so much. I've knit 6 of them and I'm planning to knit another one. So 7. This pattern has a super cool construction. You start at the cast on edge and then you knit to twice the length that you want the brim before knitting your live stitches with your cast on edge, which is what this seam is right here. And then you continue knitting for a little bit, which is what these purl bumps are, because you're actually like, this is what the outside of your work looks like, before you do a short row turn to turn it around so that the outside of the hat, like the top of your head, and the outside of the brim are both stockinette. And it's just like a genius construction. The pattern's also written super clearly, and I would highly recommend even for beginners. The hardest part is that short row turn, which is just one turn. You just got to turn it around one time. And the turn is hidden underneath the brim. So even if you do it wrong, like it's going to be hidden. You don't even need to do a real short row turn. You could just turn it around. The crown decreases are also super neat. I really like the technique that petite knit uses to make sure that your left and right leaning decreases are as symmetric as they can be. A lot of people get laddering with their left leaning decreases. For me, a slip knit is not as tight as a knit two together, but this is a different decrease. I knit this in Drops Merino Extra Fine, which is a 100% superwash wool. And it's itchy for me, but this is actually Max's beanie. And since I knit him this, he actually hasn't even worn this one. This is the perfect gray. I wish that I bought more of this yarn because I really do love this gray. However, I don't think I will buy any more yarn because it is itchy. Max doesn't think it's as itchy as I do. He wears this all the time, and he says that now that he's worn it so much, it's actually not itchy at all anymore. Maybe he's just gotten used to it. But I find it itchy. My mom finds it itchy. My dad doesn't find it itchy, but he doesn't find any wool itchy. So, if you aren't sensitive to wool, it's a great yarn. And it's very affordable. DK weight, superwash merino. Would highly recommend if you're not sensitive to wool. And then I proceeded to knit 4 more Oslo hats. And you might be thinking, Alex, there's only 3 in your hands right now. And that is because I gifted one of them. So I knit these 3 and 1 green one that I gifted to my uncle. And I'm currently knitting another green one because I need 1 more of them. And I think I need 1 more after that too. I can't really remember. But this one is my mom's, this one is Max's dad's, and this one is Max's sister-in-law's. And then his brother is going to get the green one that I knit again. So my mom's, I knit in Drops Lima. This was 2 extra skeins of Drops Lima because when I ordered yarn to finish my Esther sweater, I also over-ordered. I'm still figuring out yarn quantities. I still don't really understand. I use just under 200 meters for an Oslo hat of DK weight yarn, 2 50-gram balls. And I knit this one in Malabrigo Rios because after I knit these 2 in Drops Merino Extra Fine and Drops Lima and was complaining about it being itchy, people on TikTok really recommended Malabrigo Rios. This is 100% superwash wool. Is it merino? Superwash merino wool, I think. And it has this beautiful variegated, it's like black, but also gray and has hints of blue and red. It's a really cool color. And I think that this one is even itchy. It's not nearly as itchy as the Drops Merino Extra Fine and not nearly as itchy as the Drops Lima, but it is still a little itchy. And it's just because I'm sensitive to wool. How many times can I say that? Okay, and then this one, I also knit in Drops Merino Extra Fine in this really cool, like vibrant blue color. I love this color. If I wasn't sensitive to wool as much as I am, I would knit myself a beanie in this color because I really love this color. Then something that I don't have because I gifted it to my aunt is a Sophie scarf that I heavily modified. So I wanted like a mix between the Sophie scarf by Petite Knit and the Sophie shawl by Petite Knit. I wanted it to be more of a scarf, but not like a huge shawl because I didn't have enough time to knit a huge shawl, although I would have loved a whole huge shawl and she would have loved one. Like, it's not that I didn't want the huge shawl, it's just I didn't have time to knit it, if that makes sense. So what I did is I knit the Sophie scarf, but I increased at a faster rate so that it was thicker than the Sophie scarf. And then I knit straight for a while before decreasing. So it's longer and wider, but I didn't like keep increasing all the way and then decreasing because I didn't have time to knit it to be that wide. And I wanted it to be like the perfect length for you to wrap around once with the tails in front and for it to be long enough for you to be able to pull up over your chin a little bit to like block from the cold. It's like the perfect scarf. I knit it in some yarn from Michael's that's super soft, acrylic, but very, very, very soft. It's like fuzzy, fluffy. I'm forgetting the name of the yarn, but I'll insert it so you know. My mom and I loved it so much that I'm actually planning to knit 2 more, one for me, one for my mom, in the same color. We're all gonna be matching with our modified Sophie scarves. Jumping back a little bit, I guess I technically finished this before some of those Oslo hats and the scarf, but I hit 1,000 subscribers in October, the end of October. November. And to celebrate, I made a video of me crocheting a play button, a 1,000 subscriber play button. So I learned how to do tapestry crochet, and I knit this little tapestry that says AJF, Alex James Fiber, 1,000 subs with a little exclamation point. I have a whole vlog on how I made this if you'd like to go check that out. Another gift that I don't have with me because I gave them the gift were 2 beanies that I knit for my grandparents. My grandparents are originally from Philadelphia and they are huge Eagles fans. Philadelphia Eagles are a football team, American football team. I don't know how many people are watching my videos from like not the United States, so I feel like I need to explain those things. But they're really big Eagles fans and I wanted to knit them something for the holidays, and I decided to knit them these beanies that are Eagles themed beanies, and they have this cool stripe on the brim, so it's a little bit sporty but not like in your face sports fan, if that makes sense. I wanted it to be wearable even if you're not at an Eagles game. And then I bought little Eagles pins off Amazon and put them on there, and they love the beanies. They said that they go to a watch party whenever the Eagles play, and they have worn the beanies to the last couple games, and everybody's very jealous. Everybody wants a beanie, which I'm like, I can't knit a beanie for all your friends. I'm really sorry. But they can learn how to knit and they can knit it themselves because I wrote a pattern and it's called the Broad Street Beanie. So let's talk about the Broad Street Beanie. I'm calling it the Broad Street Beanie because Maya, one of the people who I'm mutuals with on Instagram, this beanie is actually in testing right now and she's one of the test knitters, but she recommended the name Broad Street Beanie. I wanted it to be a name that was sporty, but not in your face sports, because the beanie isn't limited to sports fans. You can knit the beanie just if you like the beanie. And you could also knit the beanie without the stripe. So I wanted it to be like referencing the Eagles maybe, but not in your face, go team. And Maya recommended the name Broad Street Beanie because Broad Street is a very well-known street in Philadelphia. The Broad Street Beanie has 3 options. Well, as many options as you want, really. The first option is the way that I designed it, which has a color A is the main color of the whole hat. Color B is the outline of the stripe, which is like 2 stripes that outline the stripe. And color C is the color for the middle of the stripe. There's a couple cool techniques in this pattern where you get stripes on the outside that don't have any purl bumps showing through. It's an all over 1x1 ribbed beanie and it's meant to be snug to your head. Like, I don't love when beanies have a lot of extra space at the top of your head, which you might be able to tell based on my other beanies that I've showed you so far. But I really want it to be snug to your head, but be comfortable, like enough circumference around your head. It's a 1x1 ribbed beanie. And when you change colors in any ribbing, the purl bumps show through on the right side. So there's a cool technique in the pattern that makes sure you avoid that. So you just get nice, clean, crisp stripes. And there's also a jogless stripe technique. Because when you're knitting in the round, it's a spiral. So the next round will come in above the previous round. You can get a little jog. And then the crown decreases, I worked really hard on the crown decreases to make them look nice and neat. The beanie is intended for a worsted weight yarn. I use Loops and Threads Impeccable Solids for the original beanies, for the Eagles beanies, because they just have like such a wide range of colors, and I found the perfect Eagles green. But you can also use any other worsted weight yarn, or you can use a DK weight yarn held with a lace weight strand. So let me show you some of the other ones that I've knit. This was the 2nd sample and the 7th sample at the same time. This one I knit for myself originally. I'll insert a photo of what it used to look like. But now I have re-knit it for my brother because he, even though this is a snug fitting beanie, he likes his beanies even shorter. He wears them basically just like sitting on top of his head. He's very cool and can, actually I think he just came home. Maybe he'll come try it on for you.
So this is how I wear my beanie.
Thanks. So you can knit the beanie shorter if you like. Okay, bye. Then I knit another beanie in Lion Brand Heartland. This is in the color Canyon Lands. And this one is for my mom. And I'll insert a photo of her wearing this beanie. This one I knit longer than the pattern says too, because she does like a little bit of room on top. 100% acrylic. My brother's is also acrylic. This one is mine. It's very special. This is Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino held with a strand of Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair. This was extra yarn from my aniela hat because, again, I did not understand yarn consumption, and I still don't really. This, unfortunately, is so itchy, but I power through because it's just like the best. It's the best beanie. I'm gonna put it on. I just think it's such a great beanie, right? Right? Like, yeah, I like it a lot. One of the pattern testers, his name's Asher. I'll insert his Instagram on the screen so you can follow him if you want. He did something that I didn't even think about, which is to omit the color C and just repeat the color A in between the stripes, which I think gives it such a sporty, cool vibe without it being like for sports team, and such a good idea. This one is for my dad, and I knit this in Cascade 220, which is a 100% wool yarn, not superwash, regular wool. It's a worsted weight yarn, and I think it works perfectly for this beanie. So your options are stripe as is written in the pattern, no stripe at all, or stripe like this. The pattern comes in 3 different sizes, small, medium, and large. It'll be released January 10th. So if you're watching this after January 10th, you can go get it if you want. I have just a couple more things. Do you know how at the beginning of this video I said I was going to figure out Tunisian crochet beanie situation so it didn't have that weird seam? Well, I figured out how to Tunisian crochet in the round, and then I knit this beanie, which is actually too small, so I'm working on another version that's a little bit bigger so that it actually fits. But and this is also two-toned, and I just think it's really cool. I really like the colors together. I really like the stripes on the brim and the waffle stitch on the head. I crocheted another one that was a little bit bigger that I also gave to my brother. It's too big for everybody, but he's cool enough that he can just wear it. I'm also realizing that I don't think I like crochet nearly as much as I like knitting. Even Tunisian crochet, I don't know. Crochet has its place. I love crochet bags, and I will probably definitely actually make more crochet bags. I'm probably tending away from crochet and more into knitting, as you can probably tell from this video, which is mostly knit stuff. Okay, the next thing I made is also a gift knit. This is the Staffin shawl by Rebecca, also known as the Crayabea. This is a recently released pattern. Sorry, I'm holding it backwards. This is a recently released pattern, and all the proceeds are going to a really cool foundation. I knit this for Max's grandmother because she specifically requested a little shawl. She wants something that can just lay over her shoulders like this. She really didn't want a big shawl. She didn't want something to wrap around her. She just wants it on top of her shoulders. And she really didn't want it to be itchy. So this is an acrylic yarn. This is the same yarn that I used for my mom's beanie. This is Lion Brand Heartland in the color Canyonlands. It's this really cool heathered golden yellow color. I like it a lot. Lion Brand Heartland is so soft. I would so recommend knitting with it, especially gift knits, because it can be machine washed, which is very nice, machine wash and dried because it's acrylic. It's also really soft and comes in really beautiful heathered colors. I think I want to knit a staffin shawl for myself in the size, this is a size small, but I'd like to knit the size medium. The pattern also comes in a size large because I'd like to wear it as a scarf. This one could be worn as a scarf. You can wear it as a scarf, and honestly, maybe I do need this size. I don't know, what do you think? Should I knit the size or the size bigger? It like alternates different motifs. So you do some 2x2 rib, and then a knit purl diamond texture, and then a faux bobble thing. And then you repeat that with this nice seam coming down the middle. I knit this in a day. I think it took me like 7 hours total. That's just because I was sick and I sat on the couch all day and knit the whole thing. But obviously if you knit the bigger sizes, it'll take longer. It was very enjoyable knit. I really like striped texture things like this because it's very bite size. Like you just want to get to the next section. I bound off with Jenny's Surprisingly Stretchy Bind Off in pattern. Like I purled the purl stitches and knit the knit stitches. But I've seen other people bind off with I-cord, and I think that that looks so good. So if I were to do it again, I think I would bind off with I-cord. The last thing, I'm sure I'm forgetting some other things that I've made, but I think that this is enough for this video. And this is a pair of mittens that I self-drafted. So I made up this pattern myself, and I'm planning to write a pattern for it because enough people have asked for it. I knit this in Jojo Land Rhythm, which is a fractal yarn. I've learned that that's what it's called. Basically, the plies of the yarn are different colors and they're twisted around each other. They're also ombreed into these different combinations of colors. I bought 2 50-gram skeins. I think it's 100% superwash wool, and I used one for each, but I had, I think, like 10 grams left over of each one, so it doesn't take a full 100 grams. I really like how the mittens are cohesive, like they match, but they're not matchy-matchy. They're not exactly the same. So I did a 1x1 rib cuff on 3.5mm needles, and then I knit mitten in stockinette on 4mm needles. And I did an anatomical thumb increase situation where the thumb kind of juts out this way instead of being like stuck in front of your hand like that. I really like the way that the thumb gusset looks. The reason that I decided to make up my own pattern and not follow another pattern is because all the stockinette mittens I was seeing had weird decreases at the top. Not weird, I just personally didn't like them, and I really didn't want it to look like it was just cinched at the top. I didn't want it to be pointy or blunt. So I kind of took what I learned from I did this in my podcast episode too. I can't remember what they called, even though I was talking about them earlier. The mittens I knit at the beginning of the year. Editing me will put it in here because I cannot remember. I'm really sorry. I took what I learned from knitting those mittens, and then I'm also currently knitting the Alma mittens, which are not a finished object, so they're not in this video, but if you want to see them, you can watch my podcast episodes. I decided to make this mitten, which is kind of like a hybrid of the two, but also not because it's fully stockinette. Like one of those is fisherman's rib and one of those is colorwork, so this is also a completely different category of mitten. Anyway, so I did decreases on the side like that, and then I did Kitchener stitch on the top of the mitten and on the top of the thumb to give it like a nice rounded look instead of a pointy look, or instead of a like blunt cut across look. These mittens are too big for me because the recipient has much larger hands than I do, and I'm really hoping that they fit her. But another little quirk of these mittens is that they're from Max's mom. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but she actually is missing the top half of her left thumb. So I knit the left thumb shorter than the right thumb. I don't know if you can tell there, because I hate when there's extra room in fingers of gloves, in thumbs of mittens. So I really wanted to make sure they fit her. Like, I'm hand making them, they might as well be custom fit too. And these will become a pattern in the new year if you'd like to make them. If you'd like to test knit for me, I do all my tester calls on Instagram, so make sure to follow me on Instagram. It's the same username as my YouTube and my TikTok, if you want to follow me on TikTok too. I'm sure I'm forgetting stuff, but I feel like that's sufficient. That pretty much captures what my 2024 looked like. Thank you so much for watching and for sticking with me all the way until the end. If you're still here, I really appreciate you. I am a nosy person, and I love to know what people are knitting on while they watch YouTube videos, because that's what we all like to do, right? Is knit and watch podcasts, and especially watch everything I knit in 2024 videos because they're nice and long and very satisfying because everything is a finished object. So I would love to know what you're working on while you're watching this video, if you're working on anything, or I'd love to know your favorite project that you knit in 2024, or maybe some goals you have for 2025. And if you're not subscribed, but you enjoyed hanging out with me, maybe you can consider subscribing. Yeah, okay, I think that's enough talking for today. I will see you in the next one.